Yo, what's good with y'all, man? My name is Tej, and in this video, I'm gonna show y'all how to make a hard beat for ESTG, Lil Baby, Nardo Wick, and overall the sound that I'm going for is that darker ATL Jacob and Wheezy vibe. As always, I made this beat from scratch, so I'm gonna show y'all my whole process of making the sample and adding drums to it. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy these types of videos, be sure to hit subscribe, and if you want to know the latest on everything that I'm working on, be sure to go follow me on Instagram. And I think I've said enough, so let's just hop into the sample. For this beat, I was trying to go for a more up-tempo type of vibe, so I ended up using a tempo of 163 for the sample, and I believe the beat's also the same too. Overall, I'd say a lot of these beats are within the tempo of about 150 to 170 beats per minute. So going into the first melody sound that I have here, I have this piano layered with a string from Xenology, and I put in this first top melody pattern here, and the key that these first two melodies are in C sharp minor. So going into how I constructed the MIDI, for the most part, I'd say it's pretty much just the first two measures being duplicated. And for this, I was mainly just trying to create a dark vibe from the jump. And the notes that are going to help you do that are, of course, going to be the root note of your scale. So in this case, it's C sharp, and the second and third notes, and the fifth and sixth notes. I primarily just use the first, second, third, and fifth for this pattern. The reason why you want to use the second and third and the fifth and sixth notes of the scale is because these are the pairings of notes in the scale which are only separated by one half step or one piano key, as you can see in the piano roll. These half step gaps usually create tension, and also if you want to really go for these dark vibes, I would say try to avoid using the seventh note in the scale, because typically that adds a little bit of like a major element to it. So after I put down the MIDI for the first one, I opened up the string ensemble preset once again from Xenology. For the most part, this is just playing a simplified version what I had in the last pattern, and the notes just sustained for longer. So pairing it with what we already have, this is what it sounds like. And yes, I know that sounds really weird, but y'all just got to trust the process on this one. So for effects on the string, I just put some vintage verb on it, just a little bit of reverb. You could just use the stock reverb and that would work just fine. And once I had my first two sounds in the mixer, I armed both of the mixer tracks by highlighting these red dots here and then hitting Alt-R on my keyboard and then hitting start. I put both of those clips into the playlist and I pitched both of them up by 200 cents. So the new key of these two melodies is D sharp minor. I routed both of those to the same mixer track and I put a few effects on it. The first being default halftime on the 1/8 loop setting and leaving everything else at default. And then I put some Portal on it on the companion preset from the Grain Synthesis Bank. And in the mixer track, I set the mix level to about 60%. And then I opened up another instance of Portal and got the game preset from Max Shooter's Waves Crate 2 bank. And so combined, this is what the first two melodies now sound like. So the halftime and a little bit of those Portal effect is really the sauce behind the main melodies of this beat. This core basis really sets up the rest of the sample pretty well. So once I had my first two melodies laid out, I went back into Xenology and I got the piano and strings preset from the first sound, and I just put in these two bass notes on D sharp. Once again, I rendered that sound out and put it into the playlist. Next, I went to DB's Distro Kit and I got this ambient key preset. And in the audio clip menu, I just changed the mode from resample to stretch, so all the notes last the same amount of time. As for the MIDI, I put in this pattern here. As you can tell, it's using the D sharp minor triad for the most part. So the general basis of this pattern was just that triad or some variation of it, and then just having these, and then having this filler in between it. For the most part, this is just duplicated over. I'd say this is a fairly intricate counter melody, but honestly, it's just something of me just like kind of creating another melody, and it just so happened to be cohesive with what I already have. So I routed that sound to a mixer track and I put some halftime on it. Once again, you probably see that there's a running theme here, and I put the loop setting to 1/4 and again left everything the same. And then once again, I opened up Portal and I got the Time Traveler preset from the Grain Synthesis Bank. And this is what the counter melody sounds like after effects on it. And along with laying down my key counter melody, I also went into Omnisphere and got the good old Growler Moog bass and laid down a synth sub bass. And this is a pretty straightforward pattern. It's just following the root notes with just a handful of transition notes. Alright, so once I had all of my melody sounds done, I rendered each of the stems out as an audio clip to avoid any bleeding of any reverb sounds and whatnot, and I arranged the full loop and rendered it out as an audio file. So once I had the finished audio clip, I imported that into a new FLP where I arranged the loop to my liking and added the drums to it. I went to the audio settings for the loop and I went to the mode and changed it to stretch, so that it'd stay at the same timing if I did change the tempo. And then I pitched the final sample up by 200 cents. So the finished beat is in the key of F minor. As for my drums, I would say this is kind of complicated compared to some of the other beats that I've shown y'all on the channel, but I am trying to show y'all all the sauce on the drums. So let's just hop into that. For starters, I have my slap clap. I just put it on the third beat of every measure. Next, I opened up my hi-hat sound. And with this one, I started with a two-step pattern and I went in and manually adjusted some of the velocities here. And if y'all know me, I like to do that just to add some extra bounce to my drums. Just a personal preference, you don't necessarily have to do that. And for this pattern, I tried to incorporate a good number of rolls and also have some lower octave notes just to give it a little bit more of a unique vibe, on top of having the various velocity changes throughout it too. And for my next sound, I put in a snare. And as you can tell so far, a lot of the drum sounds are actually pretty common trap drum sounds. It's not so much of having unique drums or anything like that. It's more so of just being creative with what you have and also just knowing how to mix it a little bit. But with that being said, the snare, I put it on just the and beats on some of these, and then I stuck in a couple of snare rolls. I think both of these were using the 1/2 step snapping, and I think this one at the end is like a triplet roll, so it's using the 1/3 beat instead. And then next I put in my open hat, and this primarily just layered with the 808. And now for the 808, I actually have two different 808 patterns and they both use different sounds. For my first 808 pattern, I'm using a boosted spins 808. At first glance, you could probably tell that it's mainly revolving around the root note, which is F. For the most part, the only other notes I'm really using are the same notes that I was discussing in the first melody, which are the 5th, 6th, and the 2nd and 3rd notes in the scale. Like I said, using those notes are actually really good for creating that dark vibe, and the same goes for your 808s or anything else that might be melodic. Along with some of the normal rolls that I have, I also threw in a reverse 808 down here. So now moving on to the second 808 pattern. Like I said earlier, I used a different sound for this one. And similar to the first pattern, I primarily revolved the whole pattern around the root note. For this one, I was using a lot more variations in the pitch, especially like octaves and using the 5th note. And this is just because the 808 sounds a little bit different. I also wanted to make a more energetic version of what I had in the first 808 pattern. So that's going to do it for this one. Hope y'all enjoyed the video, found it helpful, and were able to take something away from it. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and once again, hit subscribe if you aren't already. Let me know what you'd like to see me do next in the comments, and provide any constructive feedback you might have for me. And that's going to wrap it up for this one. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.
Roll up 10